The resolution on the table. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Yes, we would request the yeas and nays on this vote.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. This vote, the yeas are 216. The nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
And happy Monday, and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It's Monday, October 9th, 2023. We're here on a Monday again, because I'm still having to go to Washington, D.C. and do stuff and watch the clown show up close and personal. And we got a whole bunch to talk about. Val Atkinson is here. Hey, Val.
Hello.
Well, you know, Val, we were here last Monday, and we were speculating whether Kevin McCarthy was going to have a job. It just cracks me up when I think about it. We were whether or not Kevin McCarthy was going to have a job, and he does not. He is a regular backbencher now. He's just another congressperson from Bakersfield, California. He's just a regular old guy, lost his office and lost the gavel. You know, one thing that struck me, even when Kevin McCarthy would hold the gavel, it always looked like he was playing speaker. Like he was, in grade school, and he was playing like he was in charge. Because I knew, and you knew, I knew, that nobody respected him. That he had to cut a deal with the devil to even get the job. You know, those 15 rounds he went through. And then the one thing that was really stupid, Val, was that he was like, okay, well, one person could ask for my head. And sure enough, Matt Gaetz asked for his head. So let's start there, Val. I'm running off at the mouth. Kevin McCarthy, he's been ousted. What say you about that?
I say hoorah. I'm not trying to hide my feelings here, Ed, but it's something we said last week on the show, that we expected this to happen. We didn't think nothing could happen to save him, because he made a deal with the devil coming in. If you guys would give me these votes on number 15, then I will allow you to have one singular guy to call for my head, and that's what happened. As a matter of fact, he was so arrogant, Ed, that in the lead up to it all, he said, bring it on, as though he welcomed that whole idea, as though he had another strategy somewhere, which he did not. And then he tried to take the position that, well, if it comes to standing up for my country or going down in flames and losing my jobs, I'll lose my job. Yeah, come on. You know, you have done nothing over the last few years to show that these are your true feelings, Mr. Speaker. You just wanted to be Speaker, and that was it. So he has been relegated to the backbench, as you say so aptly, Ed, and he's going back to Bakersfield, wherever he's from. And now we are in search of a new Speaker, meaning that we don't have one as we speak today. Hopefully by next Monday, we'll have one, because there's a lot of work to be done. But according to the House rules, there's so much that cannot be done without a Speaker of the House. This is horrible. We're in hard straits right now that we need a Speaker. Something is going to happen. And I say, get these bodies back to Washington and let's go to work and let's find a Speaker.
Well, you know, Val, speaking of that, here's a clip I want to look at. This is ABC News, and they're talking about the whole problem of not having a speaker and the guy who's sitting in the seat. And then he's from North Carolina, and we'll talk about that.
Ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy, with the crisis in Israel unfolding and the deadline to fund the government right before Thanksgiving. The clock is ticking, and we return to Rachel Scott on the Hill. Good morning again, Rachel.
Rebecca, good morning to you again. There is still no Speaker of the House, and the chamber is paralyzed with that crisis unfolding in Israel and the deadline to fund the government quickly approaching right before Thanksgiving. There is growing pressure on Republicans to move quickly here. So there is a temporary Speaker of the House, Congressman Patrick McHenry, but his power is limited. It's unclear if he can even receive a classified intelligence briefing on the situation in Israel. Republicans are saying this morning this is sending the wrong message to the rest of the world. And so the conference is now scrambling to try to unite behind one candidate to become the next Speaker of the House. There are two leading Republicans vying for votes at this point, Majority Leader Steve Scalise and also Congressman Jim Jordan, one of the Republicans leading the impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Republicans are set to meet behind closed doors in just a few hours in hopes of coalescing behind one candidate. DeMarco.
So, Val, they point out that Patrick McHenry, who is a congressman who's from western part of North Carolina, out near Charlotte, who's the speaker pro tempore, who was there in that position before Mr. McCarthy's ouster, and so now he's got the gavel, a little short guy who has been doing really nasty things because he's part of that nasty crowd of Republicans in their caucus. I guess they Freedom Caucus or whatever the hell that another North Carolinian helped start, Mr. Meadows, who is facing some trouble. But Mr. McHenry got the seat, and now he has the gavel, but he can't even sit, Val, in the meeting with the Gang of Eight, and those are the people who get briefed on what's going on internationally in foreign affairs, because he's not the real speaker. And we're going to talk about this in the second segment about what's going on in the Middle East. So he can't even be briefed on that. Not only that, the days keep ticking off to when we need a budget resolution. We know we got a continuing resolution, a CR, and that CR led to Kevin McCarthy's ouster because he had to cut a deal with the Democrats. Okay, long way to the question. Patrick McHenry, he's sitting in the pro tempore seat, but he's not being considered for speaker. Then who is? Who are the top candidates, Val, and who do you think might emerge as speaker?
Well, Mr. Jordan is one of the top candidates that they're talking about right now. The other one is a guy by the name of Scalise. I believe that's his last name. And right now, people on the inside say the Freedom Caucus folks would rather have Jordan. But fortunately, they may not get their way in this one. And we may get a more moderate person than Jordan. Jordan is a flamethrower. He really doesn't care about anything. He's the guy leading the impeach Biden charge. He was the guy that wanted to stop the 1-6 investigation. He's the same guy that told the House 1-6 committee to stuff it, that he was not going to honor a request to talk before them. I mean, the guy's just off the rails. That's one of the guys you don't want as a Speaker of the House. And I'd like to take this moment to talk about a third candidate that you didn't mention, that people have been talking about. That's our 45th president, Mr. Donald J. Trump, because the House rules say that he doesn't have to be a standing member of the House right now in order to be Speaker. And somebody said, well, they had an internal vote about Donald Trump, and he got one vote, one, throughout the Republican. So they don't even want him for that. But when it's all said and done, I think that Jim Jordan will continue to be on the Judiciary Committee, where he can throw flames and that sort of thing. I think the speakership will go to Scalise, and he will find that he is in the same position that his predecessor found himself in, McCarthy, with or without the one vote issue here to call for vacating of the position of Speaker of the House. That is an undecided thing. I think it would be smart on the part of the Republicans and the House to get rid of that one vote vacation piece and go back to the way it was in terms of needing substantially more than that. But we will see. Right now, it's a tenuous situation. We are in dire straits. We need to come together for so many other things. You mentioned the Gang of Eight and a lot of other more things than that, where the Speaker of the House is needed. The CR stops around the 15th of November. We got to do something about that. There's so many things on board here that's got to be done. And we're back here talking about what power the Freedom Caucus is going to have over the House of Representatives and who is going to have the authority to control the speaker and a person that's second in line to replace the president of the United States. It's just all crazy stuff, Ed, but nothing that's unexpected.
Well, not unexpected at all. I want to remind you, you're watching The Deal or listening to it on the podcast. It is Monday, October 9th. We're here on a Monday again because I'm still doing the DC thing for work and just makes it a little bit easier. Plus, we decided to wait because, Val, there's so much going on in the world. And again, like I said, we're going to talk about what's going on in Israel with Hamas and the Israeli government in the second segment. So, but let's wrap up, what's going to happen here. There was 45 days from the time the CR passed, and the days are ticking off. You mentioned November 15th or so when the CR is going to expire. In your humble opinion, will there be a deal reached by then to prevent a shutdown? My sense is that there's so much disarray within the Republicans. There's no way that they can come with a consensus. That I've seen some interviews with some Republican members of the caucus, and they're going, Matt Gaetz is crazy. It needs to be put out. And we haven't seen any of that happen yet. My suspicion, though, is that there's not going to be any consensus among the Republicans, not just for a leader, but what to do about the budget and come up with a real plan, or there'll be another CR. My best guess is that they'll have to have another CR, but I think there's still enough of Republicans who want to shut it down for whatever reason. They don't care about the full faith and credit of the United States. They don't care about whether or not people get paid or not. They just want that, to tear everything up. So Val, I need to buy a lottery ticket tonight. So I won't have to worry about any of this. But what's your best guess of what's going to happen at the end of that 45 days?
I think you hit it right on the head, Ed, that there'll be a follow-up CR because I don't think they can come together and pass a full-blown budget. And remember, there are some people within the Congress who happen to be a part of the Republican conference. There are some people outside of the Congress who have actually called for the shutdown of the government. They are really insane enough to think that America will blame the Democrats because the Democrats control the Senate and the Democrats control the executive branch of government, that the American people are going to blame any shutdown on the Democratic Party. This blame thing doesn't make any sense. People have got to start thinking about what a shutdown will do to the economy and the people of the United States of America. And if the economy gets hurt bad enough, remember the old saying, Ed, America sneezes and the whole world catches pneumonia. So this could be dire times, dire straits. if we don't get something done immediately about a CR to replace a CR immediately, but more importantly, a real full-blown budget right away. We got to do this because we got something going on in Crimea, in Ukraine, in Kiev, and a lot of Moscow, a lot of places going on, not to mention what you're going to be talking about in your next segment, what's going on with Hamas and what's going on in Israel right now. And the United States of America is in the middle of all that, not even to mention coming up on that, on the heels of that, Ed, is a little small place where I've been to play in a basketball tournament called Taiwan. And that's just too much to be playing around with no speaker, with no budget, and high expectations that you're going to be in the middle of it, solving everything, and you ain't got no money. Oh, I forgot I left my sword home. I was here to help somebody fight, but I didn't bring my sword with me, okay?
Yeah.
It's just too much. They've got to solve these problems because of where and who we are at this particular time.
You know, Val, every time I think about, and you're fond of mentioning this, that we make up about 4% of the world's population, right? But we unduly influence everything that goes on because we spend so much money, we burn so much fuel, we walk around as if everybody should venerate us, and they forget about there's 1.4 billion people in India, and then another 1.7 billion people in China, and there's a billion people in Africa, and then we're 350 million people here in the United States, and we think everything revolves around us. And what's happened, things do revolve around us. And what's happened is the Republicans have shown that they can't govern. They've shown that they're willing to make a mess, a hash of everything over some really weird policy decisions. The whole Dobbs decision, I think it was the dog catching the car. They've been talking about get rid of abortion for years. They do it, and then it implodes on them. The next thing is they're talking about this border thing. Val, we've flown over America, I don't know how many times, and you look down, America's pretty damn empty. I was going to say another word, but it's pretty damn empty in a lot of places. And prices for food and stuff are escalated because they don't have people to harvest the food. Well, where do those people come from? And I'll say one last thing about it. Where the hell did all these people come from when the Native Americans, speaking of Native Americans, is Happy National Indigenous People Day, by the way.
Mhm.
When the Native Americans were here, they didn't ask to see people's passports. We just came and took the shit. America said, God told me that I could have this. And if I got to kill a whole bunch of indigenous people, I'll do that. And that's what we did. And then when more of them wanted to come, they said, "Oh, come on." And more white Europeans came. But when it was other people, the Chinese Exclusion Act excluded anybody from Asia. If you were black, you couldn't immigrate from Africa. The only way you could get from Africa was you had to come as a slave. So let's just be real about what we're talking about here. The Republicans have hashed this up, and they have a mess because they don't know how to govern, and they're going to their most base racist instincts on a lot of stuff. And the way they want to govern, and they want to deny 1-6 and all this other stuff. And you may have a man who covered up child rape in Jim Jordan as your nominee for the next speaker. So let's just end that there, Val. I said a mouthful. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what's going on with Israel and Hamas and what do we have to worry about in terms of that and all that. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
The last 60 hours, Gaza subject to non-stop bombing. It's ongoing all over the place. There is no single place You can call it safe haven in Gaza. Airplane, fighters, drones, roaring all over the sky, and it's your lottery number, whether it's an apartment, whether it's tower with 100 apartments, whether it's a house, whether it's a hospital, whether it's school, shelter used by UNRWA. I mean, even the marketplace of Jabalia, the biggest refugee camp in the Middle East for Palestinians, 300,000 Palestinians were bombed, and almost 80 has been killed. I mean, this morning, and tens injured in very, very critical situation. And all this is happening, I mean, at the daylight. And no one is caring about that. Netanyahu says Gazans should leave Gaza. Where to?
Having diabetes means there's a lot you need to keep track of. Eating healthy, limiting sugary drinks, getting plenty of physical activity, checking your blood sugar throughout the day, and taking your medication. Oh, and balancing all of your other responsibilities too. Thankfully, there's help. Diabetes Self-Management Education and Support, or DSMES, can help you learn strategies to manage your diabetes so you can live a healthier life. DSMES services include a diabetes care and education specialist who works with you to develop a management plan that fits your lifestyle and cultural traditions. When you first find out that you have diabetes, during yearly follow-up visits with your doctor, or when not meeting treatment targets, when complicating factors develop, and when new situations or major life changes affect the way you take care of yourself. Managing blood sugar is key to living well with diabetes. Healthy eating, limiting sugary drinks, staying active, and finding solutions to address life challenges while living with diabetes are the best ways to manage blood sugar. In fact, when done regularly, those healthy habits can lead to a better mood, more energy, improved sleep, and help you keep a healthy weight. What's not to love about that? Medicare and most health insurance plans cover DSMES. Ask your doctor about working with a diabetes care and education specialist. Managing diabetes can be challenging, but DSMES can help. Visit cdc.gov/diabetes/DSMES for more information. With support and a good management plan, you can thrive with diabetes.
Dr. Bassem Naim, Hamas's head of political and international relations, joins me now from inside Gaza. And answer me this first of all. How does murdering hundreds of women and children and massacring young people at a music festival and kidnapping innocent civilians further the cause of the Palestinians?
Thank you very much. I am really shocked that you, as a well-respected journalist and well-respected channel, to adopt the Israeli propaganda. I think no one can confirm any of these news. We have the original story.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you saying that civilians have not died?
We didn't kill any civilians. It depends on
what about the 260 bodies? What about the 260 bodies at the music festival? Do you realise how absurd that sounds?
Now, within the operation, I cannot confirm this Israeli propaganda, because we have also news and videos showing that Israel and what Israel is today doing inside Gaza, based on the so-called Hannibal doctrine to kill thousands of Palestinians, including the hostages. And this is an adopted doctrine by the Israeli army.
Hang on, Israel is
welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It is October 9th, 2023. We were talking about the mess that the Republicans have made in the House, Val. And that mess is hampering us from probably having some sort of coherent in response to what's going on in the Middle East. You saw in the break one of the leaders from Hamas who says that their intent was not to kill civilians when they invaded Israel, but they had a specific military reason for doing it. They were tired of Israelis killing Palestinians. They were tired of Israelis building settlements on land that Israel had promised not to build land on, and so on and so forth. So, Val, I'm going to have you put on your history professor hat, and let's go back and talk about why we find ourselves here. Let's just talk about Gaza real quick. I'll give a lesson here. Gaza is anywhere from 4 to 7 miles wide and 25 miles long, and there are 9 million people there, which is a lot of people. It's one of the most densely populated places in the whole entire world, Val. So let's take me back, though. People like to think that this Israeli-Palestinian conflict goes back thousands of years, but it doesn't. I mean, it goes back about 100 years, a little over 100 years. So let's start there. Tell me what you know about the history of what is Israel and Palestine.
Well, let's not go back that far. Let's go back to something that some people alive can still remember the day. Where I'd like to go back to is I like to go back to World War II. I know a lot of people want to go to World War I when the Western people start telling who could be where and how the geographical lines are going to be drawn and that kind of thing. I think where I'd like to start is World War II, when Hitler and Mussolini decided that this was going to be a world war and it all wasn't going to be fought in Europe. So they started looking at things. The first place they went, Abyssinia, which we now call
Ethiopia.
That was an incursion done by the Italians with Mussolini. They did that. Hitler knew that there were some oil issues, that he was slight on oil, so were the Japanese. And look where all the oil was. So they made incursions into Africa, into what is now we call the Middle East and that kind of thing, so that the West, the Allies, couldn't grab that, because if we grabbed that, then they were through the Axis part of it. So that's how all of this stuff became. And we begin to tell people where they could go and when they, how they could do things. Now, fast forward to the end of World War II, when Hitler lost, and he was horrible on the Jews. A lot of people say that's how this whole thing got started. I don't go that far, but I would say he was horrible on them. And the Jews were saying, we need our own place. Something came up and somebody said, well, there's a place in Kenya that would be good for you guys. And they almost had a conniption. And they said, no. The Torah says that we belong in this geographical location over here. You mean where the Palestinians are? Yeah, that's it. And some other areas there. That is really Israel. That's where we belong. Says, okay, the war is over. Nobody has that. We own that because we just won World War II. Let's make a state out of that. Let's go to the United Nations and let's write up a resolution and let's declare this portion of land here, set aside land for Israel, the state of Israel, and have people all over Europe, all over the world to move there and declare that. People had been fighting there all along. A guy named Mahakam Begin that decided they were going to be freedom fighters and that kind of thing and all of that. So it was easy to do, but the people that were there in the area never accepted it. They never did accept it. I'm talking about the Libyans, the Egyptians, not to mention people in Jordan and people in Syria and all over that area. Nobody accepted having an Israeli state there, especially when they were talking about coming and making Jerusalem the capital. And I'll get into this religion thing later, but that wasn't the issue. Now, you got conflict. You got the seed of distrust and conflict already put there by the West, by the United States and by Great Britain in particular. and backed by the United Nations. And so we meaning the United States of America and the West, started arming Israel because they could not fight off all of these people by themselves. We armed them to the teeth, to the point that they were stronger than all of their Arab enemies combined. And in 1967, there was a war. It was called the 6-Day War. That's how long it took. It took 6 days. And the Israelis beat back all of the Arab countries combined. And the war was ended. And out of that war was a resolution, Resolution 242, one of my favorites, that the Resolution 242 says that Israel was to give back the Gaza Strip to Egypt, as Egypt owned that area of land before the 6-Day War. They were to give back the West Bank to Jordan, as Jordan owned that. They were to give back the Golan Heights to Syria, as Syria owned that part of land. So that's what 242 said was to happen. None of that happened. Israel gave them the middle finger. None of that happened. So now when other resolutions come about Arab countries stepping back or doing X or not doing Y, they want to know why Israel gets a pass and doesn't have to adhere to UN Resolution 242. And ever since then, the United States of America, in particular, the West in general, have been big supporters of Israel and really won't do anything for the rest of the countries. As a matter of fact, the United States has been buying out a lot of other people, psyching out some, like we psyched out Libya to convince Gaddafi that we will protect you if you give up your nuclear weapons and all of this other stuff. Same thing that happened to Saddam Hussein. And Abdullah in Jordan has always wanted to be a white Western man himself. And so he was easy to subdue. The Iraq War got rid of Saddam and also an incursion into Syria. We bought out Egypt, just bought them out. We'll protect you. We'll give you X amount of $1 billion for a year forever if you stop swearing that Israel is your enemy. And here recently, just on the heels or in front of this Hamas incursion into Israel, we find that there was a deal on the table for Israel and Egypt and some other people to become real buddy-buddy chummies. And this was not going to be good for the rest of the Middle East, particularly Iran. So that was another thing, that is another thing that people are looking at in terms of motivations as to how they did this and why and when. So that's a broader view of the Middle East and why all of this happened and who are the players and why they did what and who are the instigators and who's backing whom and all of these things. But the long and short of it, Ed, is the United States of America and the United Kingdom, Great Britain. Fingerprints are all over everything that goes on in the Middle East. Nothing happens in the Middle East that we don't want to happen long term. Now, we didn't want Hamas to do what they did, but I'll tell you, anything that Israel does, we're going to back. Even dropping the big one. And you know, Israel is one of the 9 nations on the planet that has nuclear weapons. Now, how do you do that when you didn't even exist in 1947? Right. You didn't even exist. No African nation has nuclear weapons. Okay? None. Right? You have the United States of America, the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union and Russia. You got China. You got France, Great Britain. Now you got North Korea, right? You got Israel. And you have 2 others, one in Scandinavia and of course, you got Canada. All of these have nuclear weapons. But like I said, there is one particular continent that's free of nuclear weapons. The original continent, Africa. Why does it have no? Here's a question for you, Ed, as I throw it back to you. What country in Africa had nuclear weapons, but gave them back? And I'll give you a hint, a one-word hint, is called apartheid.
Yes, it's South Africa.
They had nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
But had to give them
right.
back as a part of the deal to stop apartheid and turn the country back over to black folks.
Yeah, when the Negroes took over,
right?
Because we can't
get rid
be
of the nuclear weapons.
We can't be trusted with it. Hey, folks, you're listening or watching The Deal. I'm Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. He's been giving a good history lesson on this Hamas-Israel conflict. And you're right, Val. It doesn't go back as far as most people think. I wanted to go to 1987. In 1987 is important to me because that's when Hamas started. Hamas isn't some organization been around a long time. Muslim Brotherhood was, of course, active in the area because Muslim Brotherhood was in Egypt. The Gaza Strip, as you pointed out in your history lesson, is close to Egypt. As a matter of fact, it should be a part of Egypt. And the Muslim Brotherhood was a political organization that was there. And Hamas was not happy with Yasser Arafat and some of the other people who were trying to make deals with Israel. And they're like, screw this. We're going to start a military wing. That did not start until 1987. Hamas, being a part of the Muslim, springing out of the Muslim Brotherhood, was also a political organization. So Israel and everybody says, well, in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, you need to have elections. So they did. And guess who won? Hamas. So Hamas became the political people who ran the Gaza Strip. So let's just talk about that. We'll talk about the West Bank a little bit later. But because of that, they also had a military component, Fatah, and they would every once in a while. There's been at least 6, 7, 8 different, into the first and second Intifada, the raid of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, things like that cause flare-ups. So this is not anything new, Val. But I want to talk about what happened over the weekend. How in the hell were they able to surprise the Israelis, the people who are supposed to be so great at intelligence? They have never done anything on this scale since 1987 when Hamas was founded. How in the hell were they able to make this incursion into Israel without anybody being prepared for it?
In the good book, Ed, somebody said somewhere about the last war being fought on horseback with bow and arrows. And somebody that was reading the Quran must have gotten a little piece of that, because they did a low-tech type of operation on high-tech Israel. Israel have sophisticated radar systems. A part of their high-tech technology has to do with spy satellites that are detecting planes and all other things taking off and landing, all kinds of spying on communications, whether it be text or voice or whatever. They have all of that. You can't move an inch, an ounce of anything anywhere without them knowing about it, except some of these underground tunnels and bulldozers and trucks and drones that fly 10 feet off the ground and drop their payload. Radar doesn't do too well on those kinds of things. So what happened is that they use this low-tech stuff in order to catch the Israelis by surprise And it got to a point that they're just embarrassed right now and they don't know what to do. One of the things that really, I'll use the word, impressed me in their planning was you've got to know your enemy. And Hamas must have understood that the Israelis know that it is very important that you make an attempt to rescue hostages and show your people back at home that you have their interests at heart. So that's one of the things that Hamas did, was to take hostages, because they saw what happened in the Olympics back in the day when the Israelis were really, really upset about that. So they had this well planned. Hamas had this well planned, and as late as this afternoon, early this afternoon, Hamas issued a statement that they will execute a hostage publicly. They will have a recording of the execution every time the Israelis bombs a civilian area without notification. And I thought that was interesting, that they were saying that this is war. So, you know, I expect you to bomb certain places. And if you bomb a neighborhood after you've made announcements and dropped leaflets and said, hey, get out of here, because tomorrow at noon, we're going to bomb this place, give them 10 or 12 hours to get out of there, and then you bomb it, that's a part of war. But if you sneak attack them and bomb people in their sleep, we're going to execute one of the hostages on television.
Man, you know, it's getting really nasty, Val. So here's the last part we'll talk about in this segment, is that, you know, there's a religious component to this in a lot of different ways. Evangelical Christians in the United States, who, you know, I don't have time for, have said over and over again, they want a conflagration. They want the whole place to blow up, because they feel like they can't get what they want, which is the apocalypse, unless all this blows up. There are Sunnis who are in the West Bank with Hezbollah and Fatah, who didn't necessarily get along with Hamas, but they both have had to turn to I'm sorry, Hezbollah is Shia and Hamas is Sunni, but they have to both turn to the same financial resources based on something you said a little bit earlier, which is this America trying to bring Egypt and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates to the table to be buddies with Israel in exchange for whatever the deal is. I don't know what the real deal is, but so you got all these strange bedfellows. In addition to that, what a lot of people in America don't know is that a lot of Palestinians are actually Christian. They're not Muslim at all. And as a matter of fact, you know, Arafat always maintained Christian people in his organization, in the PLO. And I'm not sure how much Hamas does, or either Hezbollah. But, you know, you throw in all this mix, and then this whole claim to the area about it being because the Jewish people are entitled to it because the Torah says so is very problematic. But it fits into this position that evangelical white people in America, and I guess evangelical Black folks do too, that Israel is entitled, the state of Israel is entitled to this land. So let's end on this, Val. Tell me, will that will that ever be resolvable? I don't think it will, as long as we have religious folks, because I've seen so many interviews of evangelicals that are in Israel right now who are trapped because they went over there because they went to go visit Bethlehem or somewhere else. So talk to me about this religious component real quick.
I don't think it'll be resolved yet. I agree with you, as long as one of these desperate groups has the need and feels the urge to be in control of another group that's unlike themselves. As long as you have fear of the other and think that the only way you can be safe is to have control of the other, there will always be conflict. And we started out that way here in America, being in fear of the Native American, being in fear of the African slaves, being in fear of all of those kinds of things, even the Mexicans and that kind of thing. And Israel, the same way, same thing. They started in 48 and it's surrounded by nothing but a whole lot of people that didn't want them there. That's fear. They must have felt this. It was the same thing as people in the United States felt when they got off the boat in Ellis Island or wherever they got off the boat and came here and surrounded by Native Americans and black slaves. And that can't work. You can't ask people that you're afraid of to submit to you and serve as second-class people all of their lives so you don't have to be afraid. That's the only way these people lose their fear. If you accept second-class status for you and your family all the rest of your life. It's the only way they won't be in fear, guys. And that will not happen. So because that's not going to happen, I agree with you 100%. There will be no peace in times that we can remember or talk about.
Yeah. You know what, Val? That's a good place for us to take a break. On the way out, you're going to see some more clips of some news coverage from around the world on this because I'm actually frankly sick of the American coverage. I don't think it's good, to tell you the truth. It's too myopic, but you'll see some stuff from BBC. I'm sorry, Al Jazeera and French 24. So we'll see you on the other side. We'll be right back.
It's been Gaza's deadliest day in 15 years, and 2 million Palestinians living there are now bracing for what's to come. Israel has formally declared a state of war. Well, Israel launched another airstrike on Gaza soon after sunrise on Monday. The bombardment has killed 413 Palestinians in just 2 days. Among them, 78 were children. Israeli airstrikes have hit the besieged Palestinian enclave from all sides. It's now amassing troops near the Gaza-Israel border, and that includes 100,000 reservists. Well, in Israel, the death toll from Hamas's military operation has now surpassed 700. Many more are still missing, and gun battles have continued in at least 4 flashpoints in southern Israel. Meanwhile,
the attack required planning and coordination, a massive ground, naval, and air operation. It was a clear failure of Israeli intelligence that was in the dark about battle plans that must have taken months to prepare. Yet their agents are considered among the best in the business, masters of electronic surveillance. But such modern forms of spyware aren't enough, this expert says.
Israeli intelligence is very competent, but it depends more and more on electronic systems and optics, etc. And in Gaza, there should have been informants, human intelligence inside the Hamas networks.
And yet, the Israeli army has units dedicated to infiltration, spies, but also commandos that are capable, like on these images, of entering a West Bank hospital and getting their hands on a high-ranking Hamas officer thanks to intelligence information. This former U.S. spy spent 26 years at the CIA and operated in Gaza. Israel has numerous sources, he says, but they may have played a double game.
One question that a lot of us have is, penetrating Hamas, were they all actually double agents? Did Hamas actually send people to tell Israel what Israel wanted to hear? So I think very often with these intelligence failures, we end up collectively almost underestimating the adversary, and perhaps this is what happened here.
Experts are also puzzled by Egypt's failure, despite having spies in Gaza that are generally well-informed. Israel had placed its intelligence services at the heart of its worldwide film and series industry. On Saturday, in just a few hours, that myth went up in smoke.
Donald Trump has been blasted by the judge presiding over his fraud trial in New York. The former president was hit with a gag order after he attacked a law clerk on social media.
His daily commute tracked from above. Donald Trump was shooting from the hip the moment he walked into the courthouse.
This case should be dismissed. This is not a case.
His second day as an angry spectator. In the hands of a judge, he's repeatedly vilified.
But he's been given false information, misleading information, and corrupt information.
During today's proceedings, the former president made false claims on social media, circulating a rumour that Judge Engoron's law clerk was the girlfriend of Senate Majority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer, then repeating it to reporters in the lunch break.
This all was just put out about Schumer and the principal clerk. That is disgraceful.
Prompting the judge to issue a gag order banning any party from making future comments. Quote, "Personal attacks on members on my court staff are unacceptable, inappropriate." The Trump Organisation's ex-accountant Donald Bender testified that the company did not provide all the records his firm needed to perform its work. The former president does not have to attend court until he's called to testify, potentially weeks away.
But Trump is using these appearances like a fundraising event, calling on his supporters to dig deep as his campaign bleeds funds to pay for his defence. In New York.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is October 9th in the evening while we're recording this. So we got the freshest news I think we can get, on this, especially on this Israel-Hamas thing. I will encourage people, please do this. I can sit here and tell you all kind of stuff, but so can the news media. Look at other sources. You saw in the break, we had stuff from overseas sources because they have a different take on things. Also, go read the history of Hamas and Hezbollah. Read the Wikipedia entry if you want to, because it's actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then you'll get a sense of what this conflict is, and it's not some ancient centuries-old conflict. It's essentially within the last 70 years, as Val brought up, starting in after the war, when Jews were moved out of Europe into the Middle East, into a place they had never been, because somebody said, well, we're Zionists. We need to go back to Zion. So that's where we're going to go. And for a long time, Jews had fought the British because they felt they were oppressed by the British, and finally the British threw up their hands and said, okay, have it. Here you go. And with our help, we made that happen. So please go and look at the history of the conflict. Please read about Hezbollah, Hamas. Read about those innocent people that are also dying in Gaza in the West Bank, because you'll probably see an escalation in the West Bank too, because Hezbollah sees an opportunity, right? If the troops are having to run back and forth between the West Bank and Gaza, that allows some opportunity for them to attack. And then Iran has interest and Syria has interest. And guess where Iran and Syria get their weapons from? Russia, right? So guess what? We have a mess here, and the mess is equally opportunity mess between Republicans and Democrats, because our policy has always been support Israel regardless, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we have not had a real cogent policy on about a two-state solution. I know Barack Obama talked about it, but I don't think he did a good job. I don't think Bill Clinton did a good job on a two-state solution. And certainly the Republican presidents haven't. So I'll leave that there. Please go do some research. I know Monday Night Football is on. I know all kind of other stuff is important to you. But if you really believe that you need to make informed choices when you select your leaders, find out why they're supporting Israel regardless of whatever happens. Okay, Val. So coming back in from the break, we saw the orange guy. He had gone to New York and was grandstanding in front of the courtroom door, talking junk about Letitia James, calling her a racist, blah, blah, blah. You saw it in the clip, right? The judge was not happy, told him to shut the F up. and then the next thing you know, Trump runs. He hightails it out of town. Now, he had been sitting in court as if he had to be there, but this is a civil trial. He didn't even have to be there. But he said he had to be there, but he was trying to grandstand. I think it backfired on him because he got a gag order out of it. And he's still probably going to lose his property. Maybe not as fast as all of us want it to happen, but it probably will. So let's talk about this one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is you got Alvin Bragg, you got Letitia James, you got Fonnie Willis, right? You got Judge
Jack Smith.
Jack Smith. All right. So you got like all these high-powered people who ain't taking no mess from him. They're just not. They're just not taking any mess from him. And then four to five, I mentioned, are colored. So let's talk about the irony first of that black people are going to have to save democracy again. And then these people have not backed down from Trump at all. Does Donald Trump really think he can win the PR battle with enough people, or has he already lost it not and doesn't know it yet?
Well, the PR battle that Donald Trump and people like him are fighting is a different PR battle than the average, let me say, Democrat knows about and understand. They're speaking a different language, Ed. You and I understand it, but I'm afraid that too many general public people, Democrats in particular, don't understand the two languages that are being spoken here. They are coming out talking about stuff being stolen, races being stolen from them, and that sort of thing. Under it all, under everything, what they're really saying is, you, white man, are about to lose your culture. You are about to be the subject of somebody else's whims. You got the Jews and the blacks and the browns are going to take over this country. And you, my friend, my good Christian white friend, are going to be on the bottom. So if you know what's best for you, you better put people like Trump back in charge and let him decide who his cabinet's going to be. And they work for him, not for something on a piece of paper called the Constitution. That's what's going on. That's what's really going on. And every time I hear a commentator rail up against or comment back on a dog whistle or a talking point, I know these guys are still winning, because these guys, the people who are railing against the dog whistle and the talking point, they don't even realize there's two languages going on. They don't realize it. And what they are doing is helping Trump and his allies spread dog whistles, spread talking points, and there's no answer to those kinds of things. They don't care if you get the answer right or wrong. They could care less, because you're talking point. Their thing is, hey, they want to take America away from white Christian people, and they want to give it to black and brown people and Jews, okay? And whatever I say, that's the bottom line, regardless of what means I go by using it. And they understand that. So some of us, Ed, that read a lot and try to stay tuned to alternative forces and mediums and that kind of thing, they can't get through us, but it ain't enough of us. Because the majority out there, they are still being duped, and they are still allowing Trump and his dominions play the dog whistle double language game. And I'm afraid that they're winning too often, because if they ever lose that game, they can't win no elections. Right. They can't win any elections at all. That's the only thing. You still got a lot of poor whites who are going to lose their job, because of, or may have already lost their job because we can't have a budget. They're going to be in other financial trouble when things happen that the Freedom Caucus wants or that the Republican conference doesn't want. And then they still rush down to the polls to vote those guys back in office, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the thing, Val. You know, there's one Republican, you know, we know Chris Christie is all over Donald Trump's ass all the time.
Yeah.
But just an hour or so before we started recording tonight, Mike Pence said this, and I want to talk about it.
Take a look.
I want to focus on what you had to say about some of your fellow Republicans. You said that this is what happens when leaders in the Republican Party signal Americans retreat as leader of the free world. Weakness arouses evil. Are you talking about your former running mate?
Well, I am, but let me begin at where we ought to start. I mean, that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan has emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world. And now war is raging in Eastern Europe. And President Joe Biden's kowtowing for the last 2.5 years to the mullahs in Iran, lifting sanctions, begging them to get back in the Iran nuclear deal, and then paying $6 billion in a ransom for hostages, I think set the conditions for this unprecedented terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel. But I also believe this is what happens when we have leading voices like Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ron DeSantis signaling retreat from America's role as leader of the free world. That what happened in Ukraine was an unprovoked invasion by Russia. What happened this weekend was an unprovoked invasion by Hamas into Israel. And I really believe now more than ever, both the debate within the Republican Party and the debate within America is whether or not we're going to once again stand without apology as the leader of the free world, as the arsenal of democracy. The heartbreaking images coming out of both of these theaters of operations remind us that America is the indispensable leader of the free world. And if I'm
So, Val, Mike Pence says Donald Trump is responsible for what's going on in the Middle East, but also these people that don't want Ukraine aid and so on and so forth. And his position is that, you know, Donald Trump had failed foreign policy. Now, Mike Pence was the vice president, so he was part of that foreign policy. So let's leave that alone. But he is right in that there are a lot of those folks on the right wing who Matt Gaetz, who says that part of the reason why they displaced Kevin McCarthy is because he's not strong enough on stuff like, you know, the border wall or whatever else it is, and he's making deals with the Democrats or whatever. Number one, does Mike Pence have any chance at all of making any inroads now that he's criticizing Donald Trump or Chris Christie or Doug Burgum or any Nikki Haley for that matter? Do any of them have any chance? Or is this still going to be the Trump show because so many people are duped by Donald Trump? And back to your point about being scared that white people are going to lose their position.
Absolutely. Nobody has any chance, Ed. I mean, this guy doesn't even show up at a debate and his points go up. You know, if I'm running against this guy, and he doesn't show up, and when the debate's over, I'm further behind him than I was when the debate started. I got to get out of there. I mean, what am I going to do? I mean, so everybody knows that it's Trump's show. The question is about Pence. Does he have a chance and that kind of thing? Pence lost every chance he had when he refused to follow Trump's lead and declare the election nayo, and that's Japanese for no good. So when he refused to declare the election no good, then Trump hated him forever and still does. Trump thinks that Pence is a part of the reason he is not president right today. So he has no future. He's not going to win the presidential nomination. He can't even be VP anymore now that he started criticizing Trump. Pence has no political future that I can see, Ed. Absolutely none. He needs to retire and find him a ranch to go and play with dogs or something, because politics is not his game anymore. He can forget it.
Well, I could have told you politics wasn't his game from the start, but white evangelicals were able to stomach him, and that gave Trump some gravitas with them, and I think that's why Trump was able to win states like Iowa that Obama had won before, right? That's why Trump was able to win in Pennsylvania and places like that, because there's a significant number of white evangelicals, and we've talked about it on here a lot, Val, over the time that we've been doing the deal. I can't believe how long we've been doing it now. We started as part of trying to deal with the pandemic, and have something to talk about other than our regular show, Connections, that was on Sunday. And I think over the last 3.5 years that we've been doing this, what's clear is Donald Trump by himself is not the danger, right? It's like, you go to the doctor and, your toe is black. Well, the underlying condition may be diabetes or something else. We're still gonna have to cut off the toe, but you got to deal with all the other stuff. And all the other stuff is people like a Matt Gaetz, like a McCarthy, like a Patrick McHenry from North Carolina, who is the speaker pro tempore right now, who I fear as much as anybody else, Jim Jordan, right? Him being speaker. That would be horrible. Steve Scalise is not any better, because he himself said that he was David Duke without the robe. Right? What does that tell you? I mean, he said that. I mean, he can't take that back. It's on record. He said it. It's not good, and that's the person that we may end up with speaker as a compromise, because the Republicans have gerrymandered their way into position where they can control Congress, when we know good and damn well that they don't have enough people. You got these districts that are packed with people, and they can only elect one person in that district. So they make all these smaller districts that have Republican majorities that can win. They've done it over and over. And now we find ourselves in an untenable position. So in the coming weeks, Val, what I want to do is bring on somebody to talk about some of these voter rules, especially in a place like North Carolina, where you've successfully had a Democratic governor and a Democratic attorney general, but you can't win some of these other races because they've gerrymandered their way into those races. And you got Republicans who have hold of the courts in a lot of states. So we want to bring on some folks to talk about election laws and some of the other stuff in the coming weeks, because that's going to be important, because in a state like North Carolina, you have to present an ID now to vote. And there's been some municipal elections on the horizon where that's going to be the first time where people have to do that. So we want to talk about that. Anyway, Val, the last thing I want to talk about is the Senate, which sort of has been just chugging along. Mitch McConnell, our buddy, cut a deal with Schumer, to keep the government open. But there's still this guy named Tommy Tuberville, who's still an asshole. And he's going to be an asshole. He was an old football coach. One of those good old Southern football coaches that had Negroes running up and down the field, teaching them some character. So we know that we've gotten some of the military appointments through, but what does it do for us now that there's an actual large conflict brewing in the world, and we don't have all these military people approved because Tommy Tuberville is still an asshole?
Well, at some point, some laws have to be changed. Rules, I'm sorry. They're not laws. Rules have to be changed to bring a sense of civility back to the U.S. Senate. Because if you don't do that, you're going to continue having Tubervilles and replacements for Tommy Tuberville, okay? You're going to continue to have that. The other thing that you mentioned, Ed, that I think is going to have to stop, I don't know how to stop it yet, but it must stop if we are to save democracy, is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the kryptonite to democracy. You can't have both. Gerrymandering is the antidote, if I can use that word, not a good word. is the antidote for democracy. If you are afraid that people will get into office if you allow free, fair, and unfettered elections, if you're afraid that people will get into office that don't think like you better not have democracy. And that's where we find ourselves. We find the minority has decided to come up with a system where that will produce minority rule in a place that touts democracy all around the world. We go brag about democracy all around the world, and at home, we are practicing minority rule. And it's legal. It's called gerrymandering. So if we don't get rid of gerrymandering, as long, and North Carolina has shown this, as long as states are allowed to make their own rules about how they go about the voting electoral process, then democracy is in trouble, because it is here to stay, and it doesn't matter how you turn out to vote, how many people turn out to vote. They decide on the first tee. It's for all of my golfing buddies out there. The deal is decided on the first tee bet, and you can play as hard as you want. You can't win. It's already decided, okay? So we've got to do something about gerrymandering, and that's a thing I want to put to our guests that you talked about having on to answer some of these legal questions and that sort of thing. I want to put that to them. What can be done about gerrymandering?
Yeah.
There has to be a movement against gerrymandering. Just as we have what I like to call sub-movements around the civil rights movement, sub-movements around the voting rights movement. We've got to have a movement, a sub-movement, to get rid of gerrymandering. Is if you don't, all the other stuff you're talking about that has to do with voting won't matter.
Won't matter at all. No, it won't, Val. It won't. So you know what? We're about to run out of time, but like I always do, I ask you anything you're working on, anything you want to say or talk about before we end this thing.
Well, again, my basketball season is about to start. We're going to defend our championship this year, Ed. Got a little 13 and 14-year-old boys, so I decided that I'm probably going to have a scrimmage game with the UNC Tar Heels early. That'll give them a chance to win at least one game this coming year.
I knew you were going there. That's okay.
But anyway, we're starting here pretty soon. But other than that, and I'm getting real close to the publication of the second edition of Distractions, which I'm feeling really good about this. I think people are going to like it. It's being updated with Dobbs and a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't think I'll have time to get in very much about Hamas, but because that's a little too soon here.
A little fresh, yeah.
Yeah, a little fresh, but there are a lot of updates in there from the first one we talked about when we were talking about how important Roe was, and I had to put a whole new chapter in about what Dobbs did to Roe. I think it'll be interesting reading. So I'll keep our listening audience updated on when that'll be out. And the marketing program is going to be upgraded as well. So you'll be reading and hearing and seeing about it all over.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. I do. And folks, buy Val's other books because he needs to eat and pay bills.
Yes, please.
So there's a link right there to how you can find Val's book, because we don't want him on the corner asking for money.
Thank you.
Look, folks, we have squandered an hour of your time, but I hope you realize again how much effort we put into this. I mean, clearly, an hour is not enough time to deal with a lot of these topics, but we try to cram a lot in. But I always encourage you to go look and read and do some study on your own. I know, like I said, football season is going on, so that's real important. Or your favorite TV show is on, that's real important. Or your child has something to do and you need to go to that event. That's really important. I'm not trying to make light of that. What I will tell you though is that I make time to do this. I have a full-time job, and a very, very difficult full-time job at that. And I still write. I still keep up with things, and because I think we should. One other thing, I did see a film, Val. It's called The Creator. John David Washington is Denzel Washington's son. Is the star of the movie. It is a phenomenal movie. It's a little bit dark. It's about a dystopian future where AI has taken over, but it is the guys for the U.S. to go blow up brown and black people. So it was very interesting sitting in the theater, looking at the reaction of white folks' face when they realized that the movie was poking at white supremacy. Not AI necessarily, but these AI people had merged with brown and black people. Mm-hmm. And so the United States said, well, what do we get? The only option we have is to kill all of them. and so the whole movie is this trying to save brown and black and Asian people from the wrath of the United States because they were angry. So if you want to see a movie, see The Creator with John David Washington. I think it's the weird part is he sounds like Denzel, but looks like his mom. And so if you close your eyes, you hear Denzel, and then you open your eyes and it's not Denzel. So anyway, look, go out and do something good for somebody today. I really do mean that. And come back with us next time for another edition of The Deal. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.